1986, Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons released one of the most successful graphic novels of all time.
Oh, Jesus. Sorry about that. I had something in my throat. In 1986, the first issue of the most successful graphic novel was released. It did something never done before, deconstructing the superhero and what it means to be human in the face of certain death. Due to popularity, studios and directors fought tooth and nail to make this adaptation on the big screen. But there was one tiny problem. This was, and still is to some people, one of the most complex stories ever written. Therefore, it gained the reputation of being impossible to adapt, until one director got a tiny spark in his eye after adapting the comic book 300 to the big screen. That director was Zack Snyder. Snyder took on this monumental task head on, trying to be as faithful as possible. But was he a little too faithful in the places he shouldn't have been? In this video, we'll be talking about how Zack Snyder adapted the unadaptable. In 2009, the live-action adaptation of Watchmen was released, to very mixed reviews. Some people say it's not faithful enough, and other people say it's too faithful. I say actually it's 50-50 down the middle. Let me explain. Let's talk about characters, starting with Night Owl. Night Owl is way too confident and sure of himself in this movie. His character arc in the comics is that he's a total pushover and super unsure of himself. He is the most impotent person in all aspects, even down there.
I can't seem to... Oh, Lori, I'm sorry. It isn't you. It's just, hey, relax. It's okay. We don't have to rush things. We've got as long as it takes. And don't worry. You're doing fine.
He only finds his confidence when he puts back on the cape and cowl, but even then, he's still not 100%. In the movie, he takes charge, he knows what to do, and speaks with his chest. This takes away completely from his arc that he's supposed to have, and leaves him being a stale character compared to the source material. Dr. Manhattan is another character who is the complete opposite of what he should be. John is too demeaning to characters and the human race in this movie. He comes off as, I'm better than the whole human race because of my powers, so I don't care. While he's actually supposed to be clueless and innocent like a child. More of a, I know my role in this world as I'm just a puppet who can see everyone's strings, and me trying to change the timeline is pointless. Which is a big reason why he becomes so disconnected from humanity. He truly is clueless like a child due to his powers, and a great part showing that in the book is when he brings Lori to Mars and she can't breathe due to the lack of oxygen. He's so disconnected that he actually forgets that humans have to breathe and that the oxygen is different on Mars. It truly goes over his head.
Lori, what's... Oh, of course, please forgive me. Sometimes these things slip my mind. Jesus, John, you stupid bastard, you...
This Dr. Manhattan lacks the innocence that plays a big part into John's journey into why he leaves the world. Instead, the big reason why he leaves Earth is because he literally cannot stay. Because instead of a giant psychic squid randomly teleporting and killing millions, Ozymandias pins the blame on John. It comes off as an odd choice to do. I get that a psychic squid might have been a little too goofy for general audiences at the time, but this is a movie that shouldn't have been directed towards general audiences. It should be towards the fans. Now on to Night Owl and Dr. Manhattan's favorite love triangle point, Lori. Lori in the comics is not very detailed like everyone else is in the comics, as many women in comics aren't, sadly. But there's still a character and she does have a good subplot to her. She's very confident in the comics. She quite literally is everything Dan is not, which is what makes them such a good couple in my opinion, as opposites attract. But again, in the movie, she is the complete opposite of how she is in the comics. She whines a lot in the movie, complaining and lost of what's going on in the plot. She comes off more as the comic version of Dan than herself, and it's disappointing. She's someone who didn't really choose to be a hero. She was forced by her mother. But by the end of the story, she finally gets to make her own decision and decides for herself that she does want to be a hero. I think this is a key detail Zack Snyder missed completely with her. To no surprise to anyone, Ozymandias, better known as Adrian, is also hurt by Zack Snyder's direction of these characters. Adrian is a subversion of the villain trope. He's probably one of the least suspecting characters from the story. From the source material, Adrian is portrayed as a veiled narcissist that comes off as a teacher or father figure of sorts that everyone respects. He talks with a sense of compassion and warmth with everyone. But in this adaptation, he's completely disconnected, narcissistic, and just screams, "Hey, I'm the bad guy." He has a sense of coldness and detachment to everyone. So when it comes to the reveal that he is the big bad, you kinda knowingly already saw it coming, or even subconsciously. He just gives off that bad guy vibe. A very big key piece missing from him is that sense of regret. In the graphic novel, you see Adrian questioning if what he did was the right thing to do. There's a page of him right after he just dropped the squid and he asked Dr. Manhattan if what he did was the right call. It shows him looking for reassurance that the actions of causing over 3 million deaths were the right actions. Who is to say that what he did was okay? And you can see the sense of regret looming on his face, knowing he will never really know the answer.
Rorschach's journal.
What the fuck? Rorschach is perfect. He is literally perfect. There's really nothing I don't like about him in this movie. I think Jackie Earle Haley can go down on my list as one of the most perfect castings in Hollywood ever done. The voice, his mannerisms on how he moves and speaks, the effects on his mask, everything is perfect. There's literally no room to complain about him, and Jackie should have won an Oscar for this role. Now, what are some other aspects in this movie that are well done? The visual effects still hold up. I really love how it's shot. I love the choices for the soundtrack. One of my favorite subtle moments is when Adrian is talking to the board of directors. You can hear faintly in the background, "Everyone wants to rule the world" in his office, which is a great hint of who he is as a character. They even hint at how Night Owl and Rorschach's partnership used to be. Night Owl is based on Batman just a little. He's more of the campy side of Batman, hopeful, upbeat, and wants to play by the rules and do good. While Rorschach is the darker version of Batman. He's dark, gritty, and toes the line on what's legal, and sometimes goes over that line. So when they used to partner up, their chemistry is more of like a Batman and Robin dynamic, and it really clicked for me when I was watching this movie. The coloring in this movie is pretty bad compared to the colorful world in the comics, but what makes up for that is the costume designs, because the costumes look super cool, but that's also the problem with the costumes. In the comic, these are losers playing dress up. They all fight crime for their own selfish desires. One is a nepo baby with no confidence or sense of purpose in life, so he dresses up as an owl to feel some type of worth. One is forced to be a hero by her own mother, and then there's one who just likes to beat up people and kill. They're not supposed to look cool. They're not even super. None of them have actual powers besides one. Dr. Manhattan is the only real superhero in this story. He's the only one with actual powers and an actual logo. He even has the physique of a stereotypical superhero. He's not wearing a costume like the rest of them. He is the costume. The only ones who look how they're supposed to is Rorschach and Dr. Manhattan. And I think that's where Zack Snyder really messed up. He made everyone's costume look super cool when they're not supposed to. He gave everyone super strength, as you can see characters punching through walls, throwing people across the room with ease, and they even break bones like pencils. As a great monologue goes, with everyone super, no one will be. What that means is, if everyone has superpowers, they won't be unique anymore, which means it'll just be normal, and therefore not super. Dr. Manhattan no longer has a sense of greatness of being the only superhero in that world, because everyone in this movie is doing stuff only superheroes can do. We all love superhero stories. They do what needs to be done even at the hero's expense. But not in Watchmen. Everyone loves Watchmen because it's a story about crappy heroes whose morals are arguably questionable and are only doing what they do because they're just selfish. But Watchmen is more of a superhero story than anyone really believes. They do save the day. They save the whole world from nuclear Armageddon. The heroes do what has to be done like any other superhero. It just doesn't come at the expense of themselves. It's at the expense of 3 million people in New York City and one troubled man who believed his superhero story was exposing the whole plan that saved the world. Zack Snyder made this movie from the perspective of it just being a crime noir that happens to revolve around superheroes. But it's more than that. It truly is deeper than the surface level story we got from Zack Snyder's vision. It's a character study at heart, and Snyder completely misses that and misses what makes Watchmen one of the greatest stories ever written. He was faithful to things that didn't really matter, like the splash pages being slow motion, and then he wasn't faithful enough to the key elements that make the story what it is. And I think that's why Zack Snyder failed The Watchmen as an adaptation. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, as Watchmen is one of my favorite comics of all time. I don't hate the movie. I actually do like the movie and I love to rewatch it all the time. But I feel like everything that was key elements to the story went over Zack Snyder's head completely. And it's sad. Yes, I do know that there's time constraints for movies and you just can't fit everything in that you can with a comic, but missing subtle key elements like people's personalities and how they interact and how they change throughout the story is just a big thing I can't get over, because it is a character study. Those are the main points, and he just completely disregards that and does the complete opposite of how the characters should be, so there is no real growth for how they were in the comics. Let me know if you disagree or agree in the comments. I'm actually very interested on what y'all have to say about this and see if we can come to some type of agreement or understanding from both sides. But anyway guys, my name is Comics from ABT and I'm out. Peace.